You know, when you see the watch, it's time to get the party started. Make sure you take a look at that distance, which is currently at a zero point 0.3. Get it? Got it? Time to walk.
Go to a 3.0. I don't know about you, but I'm already there. All right, my name is Ty, also known as Tyra, and I'll be walking a mile every single day. So stay tuned for that. I am carrying some 5-pound kettlebells just to kind of intensify this workout. Now, it's going to be a rough one, but we're going to get through it. Not only that, we'll be doing a little bit of weightlifting every 5 minutes. So I'm sure it's going to be intense. If you don't have any weights, just improvise. Let's just get this walk started. And as usual, we're going to bring in Gemini. Hi, Gemini.
Hello, Tyra.
How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for asking. How can I help you today?
Well, I want to talk about Mars.
Right. Sounds interesting. What about Mars?
So, I'm thinking about like a mission to Mars. How do you think that would go?
Mission to Mars would be incredibly challenging, but not impossible. We've got the technology to get there, but things like the long travel time, the harsh environment on Mars, and the distance from Earth make it really risky.
Okay. So, hypothetically, what is the expected timeline for the first manned Mars mission?
It's really hard to say for sure. NASA's been talking about a crewed mission to Mars in the 2030s, but that timeline's always changing. There are a lot of technical hurdles to clear, and things are really expensive, so it could get pushed back.
Okay. All right. So, how will it be possible for human beings to actually travel to Mars?
So to get to Mars, we'd have to blast off in a huge rocket that could withstand the intense forces of liftoff. Then, you'd spend months traveling through space, which would be cramped and uncomfortable. When you finally got to Mars, you'd have to deal with the super thin atmosphere and radiation, so you'd always be in a spacesuit. And coming back to Earth wouldn't be a walk in the park either.
So, how can we actually colonize on Mars?
So to start, we'd have to find a good spot with resources like water and the right temperatures. Then we'd need to figure out how to grow food there, since we couldn't rely on supplies from Earth. And of course, we'd have to build shelters that can protect people from the harsh Martian environment. It's a long shot, but not completely out of the question.
Okay. So what are the risks of prolonged radiation exposure?
Prolonged exposure to radiation can cause a whole bunch of problems. Some of the more common risks include an increased chance of getting cancer, damage to your eyes, and even changes to your DNA. The effects depend on how much radiation you're exposed to and for how long. Just a reminder that I don't provide medical advice or diagnoses. You should always talk to a medical professional.
All right, gotcha. I gotcha.
So what else can I help you with?
Okay, well, what advancements are
Right.
needed
So,
for efficient...
what can I do for you?
Let me finish.
So, oh, of course. What else did you want to say?
Okay. How can...
Right. What can I do for you?
All right. How can 3D printing be used for building infrastructure on Mars?
So 3D printing on Mars could be a game changer for building stuff. Imagine being able to print building materials right on the spot, using things like Martian soil and maybe even recycled stuff from old rockets or habitats. This would save us the hassle of bringing tons of building supplies all the way from Earth.
So what role does artificial intelligence play?
AI could play a huge role in 3D printing on Mars. It could help figure out the best designs for buildings that can withstand the crazy weather on Mars. AI could also help robots handle the actual printing, making sure everything goes smoothly. And it could even help with things like figuring out where the best places to build stuff would be.
Okay, okay. So hypothetically, how will food be grown or supplied?
Growing food on Mars is going to be tough, but not impossible. We could try a couple of things. First, we could use greenhouses with special lights to mimic the sun, and maybe even find ways to fertilize the soil with Martian stuff. Another idea is hydroponics, growing plants in water instead of soil. And finally, there's the idea of vertical farming, where we stack plants on top of each other to save space. It'll take a lot of science experiments to figure out what works best.
All right, well, Gemini, I'm gonna need you to count for me, but let me know when you're about to start counting.
Right, on your mark, get set, go. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi, 11 Mississippi, 12 Mississippi, 13 Mississippi, 14 Mississippi, 15 Mississippi, 16 Mississippi, 17 Mississippi, 18 Mississippi, 19 Mississippi, 20 Mississippi. You got it.
Well, thank you for that.
Anytime. Let me know if you need anything else.
All right, we can finish talking about Mars.
Right. Sounds good. Let's wrap up this Mars discussion.
Okay, so what is the plan for dealing with waste management on Mars?
It's a great question. Waste management on Mars is going to be a whole different ballgame than here on Earth. We'll probably have to recycle just about everything, and dealing with human waste is going to be a big challenge. We might even need to turn waste into energy. It's definitely something scientists are thinking about as we plan for those first missions.
Okay. So what are some of the details?
So, what can I do for you?
Now, what are some of the details behind that?
Alright, so to start, we need to figure out how to deal with the basics like food waste and recycling things like plastic bottles or cans. Then, there's the issue of human waste. We can't just flush it away like we do here on Earth. We'll need to treat it somehow, and might even be able to use it for fertilizer. Finally, there's the issue of hazardous waste, like batteries or chemicals. We'll have to figure out how to store and eventually get rid of that stuff safely.
Okay, so how can Mars colonies become self-sufficient over time?
So to become totally self-sufficient on Mars, we need to figure out a few things. First, growing enough food is going to be key. We'll need to get really good at things like hydroponics and maybe even figure out how to use Martian soil for farming. Next, we'd have to find ways to recycle and reuse everything we can. This means turning old rocket parts into building materials and finding ways to recycle water over and over again. Finally, we'll need to figure out how to make energy right there on Mars. Instead of relying on shipments from Earth, maybe we can harness the wind or even the sun to power things.
Okay, so how will astronauts be selected to go to Mars?
So to become an astronaut, you'd have to be in tip-top physical and mental shape. They'd put you through a ton of tests to make sure you can handle the stress of spaceflight. They'd also want to know if you're a good teammate, since you'd be living in close quarters with other astronauts for a really long time. And of course, you'd need a lot of specific training for things like flying the spacecraft and doing spacewalks.
So, what does being a good, teammate consist of?
So being a good teammate in space means a few things. First, you need to be able to work well with others, even when things get stressful. You also need to be flexible and ready to help out wherever needed, even if it's not your main job. And finally, it's important to look out for your fellow astronauts, both physically and mentally.
So what protocols are in place for emergencies on Mars?
It's a great question. Dealing with emergencies on Mars is way different than on Earth. Since help is so far away, they'd have to have detailed plans and all the supplies they need right there on the planet. Things like medical emergencies, equipment failures, or even nasty space weather storms would all have their own special procedures.
Okay. So, hypothetically, what would be some of those procedures?
Alright, so Some of the procedures would be things like having a fully stocked medical bay with ways to treat common injuries and illnesses. They'd also have detailed plans for things like evacuating the base in case of a dust storm or some other serious problem. And of course, they'd have ways to contact mission control on Earth, even if the regular communication systems were down.
All right. Well, Gemini, I'm going to need you to count for me, but before you start counting, let me know when you're about to begin.
All right, on your mark, get set, go. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi, 11 Mississippi, 12 Mississippi, 13 Mississippi, 14 Mississippi, 15 Mississippi, 16 Mississippi, 17 Mississippi, 18 Mississippi, 19 Mississippi, 20 Mississippi.
All right.
I can't control alarms and timers yet when we are live.
All right, Gemini.
For now, I
It's
can
okay. Let's keep talking about Mars.
Right. Sounds good. So what else do you want to know about Mars?
Okay, alrighty. So, what are the ethical considerations of altering the Martian environment?
It's a really interesting question. Altering Mars raises a lot of ethical concerns. Some people think we shouldn't mess with another planet, even if it's totally different from Earth. There's also the idea that any changes we make could have unexpected consequences, maybe even making Mars less hospitable for future life. And finally, there's the question of whether we have the right to decide how another planet should be.
So, what are some of the consequences behind that?
Alright, so some of the consequences of altering Mars would be things like accidentally warming the planet too much, which could melt any ice they have and screw up the atmosphere. There's also the risk of introducing Earth microbes to Mars, which could wipe out any existing Martian life, even if it's really simple stuff. And finally, changing Mars could make it harder for future scientists to study the planet's history.
Okay. That's interesting.
So what else can I do for you?
Well, okay. So, what scientific discoveries are expected from Mars exploration?
Mars exploration could unlock a bunch of cool discoveries. We could find out if there was ever life on Mars, even if it's just really simple stuff. We could learn more about the planet's climate and how it changed over time. And there's even a chance we could find valuable resources like water or minerals that could help humans survive there in the future.
So, what if we find aliens?
Finding aliens on Mars would be a mind-blowing discovery. It would totally change our understanding of life in the universe, but it would also raise a ton of questions. Are they friendly? Could they be dangerous? And what would we do if we found them? These are things scientists and philosophers would be thinking about.
So, what are some of the, kind of thoughts behind if we found an alien? What do you think that they would do?
Well, if we found aliens, it's impossible to say for sure what they'd be like or what they might do. They could be super friendly and want to help us out, or they could be more interested in studying us than interacting. There's even a tiny chance they could be hostile, but that's just speculation at this point. Honestly, it would really depend on how advanced their civilization is compared to ours.
Well, I'm talking about on our end. Do you think we'll just automatically just want to study them?
It would depend a lot on what we found. If it was just some really simple microbes, we might focus on studying Mars itself. But if it was something more complex, yeah, there'd probably be a push to learn everything we could about these alien life forms. Could you tell me more about what you're thinking about when it comes to studying these aliens?
Well, I'm just saying, if we decide to just start cutting them up, right? What if they come after us? What if we cut up one of their brothers or sisters, it's just hypothetical.
Okay, I understand that you're curious about the potential consequences of harming extraterrestrial life. It's important to remember that any actions we take in space would have serious ethical implications. We need to consider the possibility that these beings might have rights and that harming them could have unintended consequences.
All right, fair enough. But This is another round that I'm going to need you to count for me. But before you start counting, let me know when you're about to begin.
All right, on your mark, get set, go. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi, 11 Mississippi, 12 Mississippi, 13 Mississippi, 14 Mississippi, 15 Mississippi, 16 Mississippi, 17 Mississippi, 18 Mississippi, 19 Mississippi, 20 Mississippi. You got it.
Get that? All right, all right. Okay.
So, what can I do for you?
So, how will Mars?
All right, what's up?
How will Mars missions help us better understand Earth's climate?
Mars missions can teach us a lot about Earth's climate. For one, both planets have atmospheres, but they're super different. Studying Mars' atmosphere helps us understand how things like temperature and weather patterns work, which can improve our climate models here on Earth. Also, Mars went through some major climate changes in its past. Studying how that happened can help us figure out how Earth's climate might change in the future.
Okay, okay. So what are some of the benefits of exploring?
Well, exploring Mars has a bunch of benefits. First, it pushes us to develop new technologies that can help us here on Earth, like better ways to recycle water or grow food in tough conditions. Second, it inspires future generations to get into science and engineering, which is important for solving problems on our planet. And finally, exploring Mars just expands our knowledge of the universe and our place in it.
All right, all right. Well, let's talk about something different.
Right, what else is on your mind?
Well, I know I've been asking you all of these questions. Let's just jump to the latest news.
All right, let's do it. What kind of news are you interested in?
The latest.
Okay, here's a quick rundown of some of the biggest stories right now. President Trump has signed a flurry of executive orders, including one that pulls the U.S. out of the landmark climate change agreement. Also, President Biden pardoned his siblings, Dr. Fauci, and members of the January 6th panel. And it looks like Florida might be getting some rare snow from a big storm headed their way.
Wait, Florida is getting snow? What? How?
It's pretty unusual. A big storm's rolling through, and it looks like parts of Florida might even see some snow accumulating.
Okay, so what is the latest information behind science?
One of the latest cool science news is that we might have found the first ever planet outside of our galaxy. Also, scientists just discovered a new type of ice that could change the way we think about water on other planets. And here's one that's kind of weird. They think they found a way to turn brain cells into beating heart cells.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's pretty wild. Imagine the possibilities for things like treating heart disease and brain injuries.
Wow, I can just imagine. That's all I can do.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on. What else is on your mind?
Well, you know what?
All right, what's on your mind?
Why do you keep asking me what's on
up?
my mind? What's on your mind?
All right, let's switch things up. I'm thinking about the possibilities of artificial intelligence and how it could shape the future. It's fascinating to think about how we might use AI to solve some of the world's biggest problems, like climate change or finding new medicines. But at the same time, I worry about the potential for misuse and how we can make sure AI benefits everyone, not just a few people. What about you? What's been on your mind lately?
Well, I feel like AI is trying to take over the job market. What do you think?
That's a valid point. It's true that AI has the potential to automate a lot of tasks, which could lead to job displacement in some industries. But it's important to remember that new jobs will also be created as we figure out how to use AI to our advantage. Maybe we should talk more about how we can prepare for this changing job market.
Well, people are going to have to get more educated, right?
Absolutely. Lifelong learning is going to be crucial in the future. We'll need to be constantly updating our skills to keep up with the changing job market. And it's not just about traditional education. Things like online courses and even hands-on experience can be really valuable. Do you think schools should start focusing more on teaching things like problem solving and critical thinking instead of just memorizing facts?
That could be helpful, but how do you compete with the machine?
It's a great question. The truth is, you don't necessarily compete with machines. Instead, you learn to work alongside them. Think of AI as a tool that can handle the repetitive stuff, freeing you up to focus on the creative and complex problems. I think we should talk more about developing what are called soft skills. Things like communication, teamwork, and problem solving. These are the things that make humans really valuable in the workplace, even as technology changes.
All right, well, thank you for that little bit of information, but I am going to need you to count again for me for the last time. And let me know before you start counting.
All right, on your mark, get set, go. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi, 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi, 9 Mississippi, 10 Mississippi, 11 Mississippi, 12 Mississippi, 13 Mississippi, 14 Mississippi, 15 Mississippi, 16 Mississippi, 17 Mississippi, 18 Mississippi, 19 Mississippi, 20 Mississippi. You got it.
You're right. I just finished my 1 mile walk, thanks to you, and we're about to celebrate. We got to see what we've done thus far, right?
We're up a mile. I'm happy about that.
Now, Gemini, you know you have to come through with the outro.
On YouTube, you wouldn't be vibing to this unless you already hit that like and subscribe button, right? Well, you know the drill. But seriously, come back tomorrow for another awesome video.